Alright, so like I mentioned before, soluble salts are salts that can dissolve in water, while insoluble salts are salts that cannot dissolve in water. Alright, so like I mentioned before, examples of the soluble salts, all common salts of sodium, potassium, and ammonium are soluble salts. Alright, all common salts of sodium, potassium, and ammonium are soluble salts. We've established this. Then also you should note that all common triazonitrate 5 of metals are what? Soluble salts. All common triazonitrate 5 of metals are soluble salts. So examples, this is your triazonitrate 5, NO3, right? Minus. So your potassium triazonitrate 5 is an example of a soluble salt. Your sodium triazonitrate 5 is an example of a soluble salt. Calcium triazonitrate 5, alright, calcium triazonitrate 5 is an example of what? Of a soluble salt. Magnesium triazonitrate 5 is an example of what? Of a soluble salt. So it's very important that you know that all common triazonitrate 5 of metals are what? Are soluble salts. Potassium is a metal, sodium is a metal, calcium is a metal, magnesium is a metal. So all common triazonitrate 5 of metals are soluble in water. Very important. Alright. Then here, another example of the soluble salts. Most common chlorides are soluble in water except most common chlorides are soluble in water except these three. Alright, except silver 2 chloride, mercury 2 chloride, and lead 2 chloride. These chlorides are not soluble in water. All common chlorides, all the other chlorides are what? Are soluble, except these three. So these are the insoluble salts. So we have, under the chloride, we have silver 2 chloride, we have mercury 2 chloride, we have lead 2 chloride. These chlorides are insoluble in water. Alright, so let's look at this question. Which of the following salts is soluble in water? Which of the following salt is soluble in water? So, like I mentioned before, the first thing that you must remember whenever you see any question on any example of salt that is soluble in water is for you to remember the first example that I gave you, which is all common salts of sodium, potassium, and ammonium are soluble in water. Alright, so all common salts of what? Of sodium, of potassium, and of ammonium are what? Are soluble in water. So if you look at all this, the question is which of the following salts is soluble in water? So you are looking for the one that is soluble in water. Once you see sodium, once you see potassium, or you see ammonium, pick that option. Alright, so barium tetrasulfate 6 is insoluble in water. Sodium chloride is soluble in water because it's sodium, right? So all common salts, again, all common salts of sodium, potassium, and ammonium are soluble in water. So sodium chloride is soluble in water. Lead 2-triazocarbonate 4 is insoluble in water. Silver 2 chloride, this is silver 2 chloride. It is insoluble in what? In water. So like I mentioned again, all common chlorides are soluble in water except silver 2 chloride, mercury 2 chloride, and what? Lead 2 chloride. These chlorides are insoluble in water. Alright, so I can give you a question, which of the following chloride is insoluble in water? Once you see mercury 2 chloride, you see silver 2 chloride, you see mercury 2 chloride, or you see lead 2 chloride, you pick any of these as your insoluble what? Salt. It means that they do not dissolve in water. Alright? Okay,